Welcome back to the series. We have done Node.js installation and also we have created our own first React application in the previous episodes. So in this third episode, we are going to create our own first component. So before creating our own first component, let us understand what is component in React. In React, everything is a component. Everything that we see on the web page can be a component. So your React application can be divided into multiple components. So that means your React applications can have thousands of components. It can be big. Your React applications can be big, can be small. Some big React applications can have thousands of components. Components can be different types in React. So we mainly have 4 types of components: class components, functional components, higher order components, and pure components. So let's take an example and see how each component looks. So here is an example of class component. So I did not put all the lifecycle methods, all the things of class component here, but here is an example of class component. First, we extend react.component at line number 3, and then we initialize the state in the constructor. So if you look at the state, we have street number, street name, city, state, all these variables. We initialize the state in the constructor, and then we have a render function which actually returns the HTML. So if you want to change, these are class components which uses the state. If you change the state, that means if you change any street number here, it re-renders the whole HTML under the render function and it returns the HTML again. So basically, and also it uses lifecycle methods as well. Sometimes these class components receive the props from the top components. When it receives the props, there is a lifecycle method called component will receive props that will be invoked. When that is invoked, you can actually put the logic there. For example, if you receive the new address from the top component, you can actually use component will receive props lifecycle method to set the state again. If you receive the address and you set the new address, and the render function will paint the new address on the browser. So that is how the class component works. So it uses React state, it uses constructor, and it uses React component, and also it uses lifecycle methods. Here is an example of functional component. So functional components is a replacement of class components nowadays. So nobody is using class components nowadays. So if you are starting a React application now, you will be using functional components instead of class components. So in functional components, we use React hooks. For example, at line number 15, use effect is a hook. This use effect hook is a replacement for all the lifecycle methods. So the way we use effect here is it changes the lifecycle of this component. For example, at line number 20, this use effect hook as an array, and this array contains number of tasks and each task edited. So whenever there is a change in these props from the top component, so this use effect will be invoked. So for example, so you receive number of tasks 5 and it re-renders the application with 5. Here's an example of pure component. So these pure components takes props and it returns HTML. And so it doesn't do anything. It takes props and it uses those props in the HTML, in the JSX, and it returns the HTML. So these pure components can be used as presentational components. That means, so these components are dumb components. That means it doesn't use any state. It doesn't use any hooks. All it does is it takes the props, it takes the input, and it uses those input props in the HTML, and it paints the browser. That's it. So the final one is higher order components. So these higher order components can be used as a reusability. So here the higher order component is with router, and with router takes another component as an input and it will output another component. So one more thing we need to remember when it comes to the React. React is a library. It is not a complete framework. So when you are actually working on a big application, so you have to design your own React structure. So you take a, I mean, so it all depends on how you define your structure. So that means, for example, you have an application and you have pages and modules. You can actually create pages and modules with React components, and each module can be divided into multiple components again. And you can define routers. For example, if you go to page 1 and page 1 contains these many components, and page 2 contains these many components, and page 3 or module 3 contains these many components. So it all depends on how you define. So React is not a framework. So React actually is a library, and you need to define, you need to know how to structure your application. If you want to be successful in React, you definitely need to know how to structure your application in an efficient manner. So we just discussed React is a library, it's not a framework. So the immediate question would be, are there any frameworks, React frameworks out there? Yes, we have React frameworks. So React, in the official website, React is recommending Remix and Next.js. So these are the two frameworks which are popular and widely used. So you can go to their website and you can actually take a look how these works. And also in the future episodes we will see how these work, and also we will make some example projects in the future episodes. So now we are done with the theory. Let's dive into the actual code. So we have already created a simple we have started a simple React application in the previous episodes. Let's open the same application and let's try to run application. So I'm going to start this application which is running on port 3000. Yes, it is running on port 3000. So let's create two simple components. We have seen how many different types of components we can create in React. So we are going to create two simple components in the same component app.js. So I'm going to name the first component as hello world, which returns a simple message, hello world. So we have already seen how to write a functional component. So we define the component with function and it actually returns. So this hello world function doesn't take any props. So that's why the hello world function doesn't have any properties. Since let's finish this. Yes, hello world is done now. So now the first component is completed. So since this component is in the same file as app.js, you can directly use. All you need to do is brackets and with hello world. Yep, it's running and it automatically updates. Now let's define a second function. So we have defined a first function without any properties. That means without any props. So let's define another function which actually takes the props. So this is a simplified version of writing functional component. So since I am returning only one statement, I am not using any curly braces. I am just using fat arrow, and so this message takes the message as a prop and it uses that message in the returned JSX. Now I can use this message component in the hello world component. Since these are all in the same file, I can directly use the message. Since this message component takes message as a prop, I'm just passing welcome to your first component. Yep, that's it. I think we are done with our first components. So we have defined components now. So let's see how we can separate these components into separate files. So under source folder, you can create a components directly under source folder, but I'm going to create components folder because since these are components, I'm going to name that folder as components, and then under components, I'm going to create two files. One file is message and another file hello world. So React accepts both extensions .js and .jsx. So I'm going to have two extensions for the testing purpose. So let's copy the hello world function and move that function to hello world file. Let's copy it here and then copy the message function and paste it in the message file. Now we have moved our logic to its own components, and now since these are in a separate components, now actually the compiler will tell you this hello world is not defined. So that means we need to export from here so that this component can be imported. So first let's export message because the message component is used in the hello world function. So let's export message and let's import message here. So this is how you export component from another file and you import component in another file. Now the export and import is completed, and let's go back to hello world and have an export function here. Have an export keyword with the default. So when you use default, you don't have to use curly braces because the entire file, you are importing the entire file as hello world. Now this is compiled successfully. Now it is running successfully. So for testing purposes, let's change something. Let's change the message from welcome to your first component to I am from components folder. Yep. Yes, it's working. So this is how you create components, and you create components in its own files, and this is how you export and this is how you import. And let's change this to JSX for consistency. Yep. So now we have changed components. We have created separate components in separate files, and we imported those components. And let's see how we can add some styling here. So there are a number of ways we can add styling to React in React components. We will discuss those in the later episodes. But in this we just define a styling in the app.css, which is the global CSS file. So I'm defining a box. I'm defining a class called box with background color red, color white, and with some padding and some margin. So if you add any style in the app.css, it will be applied to all the components because this app.css is imported in app.js file. So yes, as you can see on the line number 1, it is imported in app.js. So since app.js is our first component, this app.css styling will be applied to all the components. So let's change the class. Let's add the class name. So in one thing here, the class name, right? Basically in all other libraries, class is class, right? In React, class is class name. Yes, it is applied and it is working fine. Let's see how, if we have multiple components here like this, let's see how it works. Yes, we have 4 components. So we have defined 4 components, and we can actually see 4 components in the browser as well. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.